what could we do except have Pee Wee as our first caller of the night tonight? Pee Wee in Grand Bay, welcome to the show, sir.
Oh, thank you very much.
Pee Wee, we missed you, man. But I'm going to tell you before you ever ask. We got bigger problems than the offensive line. You understand? I know you're going to want to talk about all that. Hi, but we're good. We're good. I mean,
all right, well, I'll take your word for that, Coach.
no, go ahead and ask whatever you want. I'm just kidding.
The coach joins us again. Coach, we were just talking about what you've talked about and not wasting a failure. What's been the mental attitude of the players here in the fall camp, getting ready for the season on the heels of last year?
Team has been good. I mean, we really have. I've been really pleased with the way this team has worked, stayed together. We don't have a lot of guys. I mean, we've had a couple guys that, you know, exited a program, whether it was their choice or our choice for them to do that were what I call energy vampires. You spend all your time trying to manage them, and you can't spend any time with the guys that are doing things right. But this team has been really good. But I think the question that you pose to them is, you know, why are we playing this game? What is the goal that we have in this game? And you know, we started out the season saying we really want to reestablish the identity of what Alabama football and the Bama way has been for us for, you know, the last 10, 12 years. And I thought we lost that a little bit last year. So the players have been really committed to it. And I think the question you have to ask yourself, what's your opinion of us when the game is over? You know, do you respect how you played relative to the standard, you know, individually and collectively as a group? And I think it's not really about who we're playing as much as it is about what we do and how we do it. And even though we have a lot of respect for Duke, but I'm interested to see how our guys respond. You know, I watch, you know, football on TV sometimes, and, you know, there's a lot of things that I see that self-indulgent behavior, players bringing attention to themselves, lack of discipline. You know, when you don't have respect for discipline, you know, a lot of bad things happen. You know, you get a lot of penalties. You get a lot of late hits, you get a lot of bad decisions, don't really play smart in critical situations. And, you know, that's never been the trademark of our team. So that's certainly something that, you know, we want to try to reestablish, you know, with our players. And, you know, we've always had a rule where, you know, players don't talk to the opposing team. I tell our players, you know, if you want to talk to the other team, join the debate team. I mean, excuse my language, but I'm really sorry for, you know, using the Lord's name in vain, but I just really get hot about what I see in sports that we promote in the media and in every other way that really is not a good thing. That's not what we're trying to accomplish in what we do. So, anyway.
Cecil, your turn.
Perfect timing.
Yes.
Just as a follow-up to that, I got up this morning and listened to you on Dan Patrick's radio show, and you made a general comment about the importance of upperclassmen, of key players doing things the right way. I think he asked you about Tua parking in your parking place or something off the wall, but you had a pretty interesting statement, and I just wondered if you could review that a little bit.
Well, what was it? Because I can't remember. I've had a lot of conversations since 7 o'clock this morning.
You just talked about how, you know, sometimes something may not appear to be that big a deal, but it's other players on the team are watching what the key players do.
Well, and I think, you know, that's a message that, you know, we send to players is, you know, a lot of times players think because they're really good players, that they should be entitled to do things differently than the rest of the players, and that there should be no consequence for their feeling of entitlement, because they think they're good players. But it's just the contrary of that. I mean, it's exactly the opposite. And, you know, I tell the players, I said, look, you guys don't do what you're supposed to do. The whole team is watching. So if I don't follow through with the discipline that you're supposed to get for what you did or didn't do, then everybody's going to say, well, I don't have to come in on the right time for curfew, or I don't have to do this, or I don't have to do that, because you didn't do anything or you didn't follow through with the good players. I said, if we have players that are freshmen that mess up, I really have a lot more patience with them. But when we have older guys that know what they're supposed to do, and they don't do it the right way, everybody on the team is watching how that gets handled. All right, so it's important that you stick to your guns, and you make sure that if you have to set an example, you set an example, and that's how it has to be. And really, the ultimate example, and I don't care what you make guys do, they can do community service, they can do whatever they want. But when you take playing time away from them, that changes their behavior, all right, because everybody wants to play. And discipline is not punishment. All right, discipline is changing someone's behavior to get them to do the right thing. And if you're going to do that, you got to take something significant away from them to get them to do it. And that's what everybody.
And you've got what they want. Playing time.
That's what they all want. They all want to play.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I thought that he looked great in the game, and he was elusive too. He really showed off his legs, especially a couple of times when the pocket broke down in the game. Coach, I found an interesting connection in this game. Frank Spaziani is the defensive coordinator at New Mexico State. Of course, used to be the head coach at Boston College. In 1981, he coached the defensive backs at Navy, and he left there at the end of the year to go with head coach George Welsh to Virginia. And the man that took over as the defensive backs coach at Navy in 1982 was you.
Right.
So what kind of talent did Frank Spaziani leave you at defensive back in 1982?
Well, Frank obviously went to Virginia, but as we were there at Navy, he would come back and visit, quite a bit because he had a home there, and it takes a while to move your family and all that. So I got to know him, really well, and he's an outstanding coach, especially a really good defensive coach. Always was a really good defensive coordinator in any time. Good secondary coach. I learned a lot from him, way back in the day. But when you coach at the Naval Academy, you coach the greatest young people in the world. I mean, they are so disciplined, and it was crazy. I mean, I would get on a guy and he would keep saying yes, sir, and it would make me mad that he kept saying yes, sir. And I would say, if you say what yes, sir, one more time, I'm going to kick you in the butt. And he would say yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It was just. But I think, those guys always play, way better than they are because they are so smart. They're very coachable, and. I was always amazed at the discipline that the players at the academy have. I mean, I even asked the commandant once, why do you make these guys do all these things that you make them do, that seem like they're sort of stupid discipline type things? And he said, because if they're in a plane over Afghanistan and we tell them don't shoot unless they get shot at, I want to make daggone sure that's what happens. So I kind of always had a tremendous amount of respect for that, and coaching there was really great. Being there with those kind of players was great, and that's where I met Frank the first time. And he's been coaching really well for a long time.
Yeah, he has. And his first game, Coach Saban's first game at Navy, was against Frank Spaziani's Virginia Cavaliers
That's
following
right.
season. Yeah.
Frank,
It's amazing,
George Welsh.
as big a business as coaching is, broadcasting, it's a very small fraternity when you break. Everybody knows everybody.
Well, and Gary Tranquil had coached there with all those guys, and George
Right.
Welsh, and then I met Gary at West Virginia, and he had been at Ohio State, and that's how I got there because Gary went from West Virginia as the offensive coordinator to take George's place. So it is kind of a
And Frank
small world.
would hire Gary Tranquil to be his offense coordinator at Boston College years later. So you're right.
Exactly. It's amazing. Everybody knows everybody, and you just keep hooking up with jobs. David in Moody, Alabama says you and your staff have embraced technology like the catapult system, using now the sideline tent if necessary to benefit the student athletes. Is that your favorite technology tool, the catapult system, or is there something else that we might not know about that you rely very heavily on?
Well, I think for me as a coach, the catapult system tells me a lot about how we should practice every week. I haven't shared this publicly with anybody. I have shared it with our team, but we do a graph so we have individual records of every guy's catapult scores. So what their explosive movements are, how many times they duplicate it. Then we do it by position. Then we do it on offense, we do it on defense, and we do it as a whole team. All right, so when we do it as a whole team, we can say, okay, how did we practice when we played the Citadel? How did we practice when we played LSU? All right, what was the different levels? All right, and then you can put it up on the board and say, look, guys, you know, when we play a good team, we really practice well and we really play well. And when we play a team that we don't have the same respect for, we don't practice nearly as well, we don't really play nearly as well, and that's not good for you, your future, or anybody. You know, what I always tell these guys is what they don't understand is they think everything's based on volume, and everything's really based on quality, quality of your performance. And I always tell them, I said, you know, and Miss Terry can vouch for this, I used to sit in a chair in our house in Miami, and I had my laptop, and I would watch players because they made a cut-up of the players. I didn't know the score in the game. I didn't know who they were playing against. I didn't know how many plays they played. I didn't know how many yards they gained. I don't know how many passes they caught. I don't know how many interceptions they had. I was just watching them and the plays that they played. All right, so what's so hard to figure out about when you get the opportunity to play? Why don't you play well rather than get frustrated about how much you're playing or what your role is or whatever, because you're going to be evaluated on whatever you do when you play.
Sure.
Nobody knows who you're playing against. You know, so if you have a killer instinct, do you go after a rabbit different than a buffalo? I don't really know. I mean, you shouldn't.
No,
Should
you
you
shouldn't.
play one way when you're ahead by 14 points and another way when you're behind by 14 points? Because I'm evaluating at Miami, and I don't even know what the score is.
Better do your best.
Yeah.
Just do your best.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
And it's a simple concept, but it's so hard for people to grasp it.
It's interesting you say that because I was thinking of all the golf work I do. I know you're good friends with Justin Thomas, who, of course, went to school here, and he won a tournament in Chicago a few weeks ago, and he was asked, he had a 6-shot lead going into the final round, and they asked him, how are you going to handle a 6-shot lead? And his response was, I'm going to try to get it to 7, and then I'm going to try to get it to 8, and then I'm going to try to get it to 9. I'm going to think about how I can play my best. And he referenced you and your relationship on keeping your head down and focusing no matter what the lead is or what the deficit is. And it seems like it's hard to teach that, though, to train that. It takes time, right?
Yeah, you know what WIN stands for? What's important now?
Yeah.
That's WIN. All right, so if you can stay focused on what's happening right now, then you're going to have a better chance to be successful, regardless of what the circumstances are. You've heard me say this 100 times before. Outcomes are a distraction. Focusing on the process of what you have to do to get the outcome is the most important thing you need to do. All right? But people are so outcome-oriented. The media is so outcome-oriented. Just like I get asked questions. You know, I thought our front did a great job in the game because that quarterback, number 18 for Duke, he's a runner. He can run. And every game that he started last year, he made lots of big plays, scrambling out of the pocket, running for first downs and all that. So my question this week is, because we only got 1 sack, but our front guys did a great job because the whole idea was not to try to sack the guy and get knocked by the quarterback and all this, get out of your pass rush lanes. It was make sure the guy doesn't run. But we only got 1 sack, so the questions I have, not that anybody knows anything about pass rush, it's in the media, but you only got 1 sack, so what are you going to do to improve this pass rush? But the pass rush was exactly what we planned for it to be against that player.
Yep. Sacks aren't the end-all and be-all.
Well, there's not one statistical evidence in football that says sacks have anything to do with the outcome of a game. Turnovers, explosive plays, how you do on 3rd down, how you score in the red area, those things have, there's statistical information that says that impacts winning and losing. Sacks do not. Affecting the quarterback does, but that you don't have to sack the quarterback to affect them.
Pressure him. Or
Push
take
him up
away what
the
he
push
does.
it up the
Yeah,
middle so he can't see and step up in the pocket. That'll affect him as much as anything.
Exactly.
Hi, Coach. My question is sort of a follow-up on what you talked about being intentional about teaching what it means to play Alabama football. So how does the staff sort of instill that into players who may not be familiar with Alabama?
Well, you know, I think that everybody has to understand their role, and everybody has to understand the principles and values of the organization, which are very, very clearly defined in terms of what the expectation is of a player, you know, to be a part of our program and a part of our team. So it starts really with that. I think if you're going to have a team, everybody has to buy into those things, but you have to clearly define what those things are. So this is the expectation we have for everybody as an individual. And everybody has to do it because it's the only way that they respect each other, and that's the only way you can build any trust in your organization. And you want to do it in a positive way, not a negative way. But, everybody's got to be responsible for their own self-determination. Once you determine what those things are, right, then everybody's got to be responsible to do it. And, that same word keeps coming up all the time. That takes a certain amount of discipline. It takes a certain amount of accountability. And it takes a certain amount of team togetherness, which comes back to the words respect and trust for each other. So, and if you're ever going to have any resiliency on your team, if you're ever going to have a team that can overcome adversity and respond the right way when things aren't going right, that's how it's got to be. It's easy to be a front runner. It's easy for, to go out there and play well when everything's going well for you. Sometimes I say to players, how you doing today? They say, I'm doing great, Coach. And I say, I don't care. And they look at me like, what's up with you? And I said, I'm interested in what are you going to do when you don't feel good. Tell me how you're going to respond when things aren't going your way. Tell me how you're going to respond when you don't feel like practicing. You feel good? Everybody can do that. But sometimes it's not going to be that way. Sometimes things aren't going to go the way you want them to go. And how are you going to respond to that? And if you can't overcome adversity, you can't be a great competitor. So you can't just be a front runner and go when things are going well. You got to be able to respond to adversity and do the right things in difficult times. And so all those things are lessons that we're teaching all the time. We had some great speakers this year. And, when we have fall camp, we have like 16 days, I think, before school starts, where we have a speaker every night. We had Mike Tyson, we had Stephen A. Smith. We had some really, really good speakers. And every one of them has a message that has something to do with character building. Almost every one of them has something to do with choices and decisions that you make and how they impact your future. And what's amazing to me is we seem to have a lot of young people now who don't think there should be consequences for their choices and decisions, even when they make the wrong ones. But there always will be, and they're going to have to learn the hard way. And I hate it when we have to do something to our players. I hate it, I'm sure everybody out there hates it to do it when they have to do something to their own children. You love them. I love our players, but sometimes, you have to make them doing what's right is more important than making them happy.
Good evening, Coach.
Good evening. How you doing?
Good, thank you. Just a question. Who's a current influencer in your life, and how are they influencing you today?
A current influence in my life? I'm influenced by all people and all people that I have relationships with all over the place. I've got really good friends, players on the team. I learn things from players on the team all the time. I learn about their background, why they are the way they are, what can we do to help fix them, and things that I learned. I would be a lot better parent now than I was, 30 years ago because of some of the experiences and relationships that I've had with players and, people that I've learned from. But I think my greatest mentors and people that really sort of set me off, in a way that on the path that I'm on is, really probably my high school coach, my college coach, Don James. My parents were really instrumental. George Perlis. I've had some great mentors like Bill Belichick. So professionally I have them and personally I have them. But personally I kind of learn from everybody around me. Terry's been really influential in, telling me things that, you don't really realize about yourself that you need to change and you need to fix. And so there's just so many people. I couldn't just point out one person and say that's really been an influence on me. I read books all the time, so I'm always trying to read about how you can do better. And, the obstacle is the way. There's a tremendous lesson in, that type of thing. So there's just so many. I can't just pick out one person.
I might be prying here. I'm just kind of curious. When you and Miss Terry are at the lake and you got friends come over, whether you're sitting on the dock, going out on the boat, whatever, do you guys talk about everything but football? I mean, do they make sure to not bring up football and you talk about everything else but?
You know, I don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable about talking about football. There's a lot of great football fans. They're interested in football. They're interested in things that happen in sports. We talk about sports. We talk about, you know, things that you learn from sports that you can apply in life.
Right.
You know, whether it's, you know, pride in performance or, you know, doing things the right way, making choices and decisions, you know, not worrying about your feelings, but choosing to do the things you need to do to be successful. So we talk about all kinds of things. I'm personally interested in talking about something other than football.
Sure.
But I'm not at all upset when people bring it up or want to talk about it, or doesn't upset me at all, because
That's what
if
you
it's
do.
interesting to them, it's interesting to me. So
I hear you.
it's no big deal one way or the other.
Coach, we have a visitor right here to our right joining us, and if I'm not mistaken, I recognize your face. You joined us in the broadcast booth a year or so ago, didn't you?
Yes.
It's good to see you again.
You too.
What's your question for the coach?
I know you like to play golf in the off season. How do you manage to win at golf and football?
I don't know who gave you that report. Must have been your dad. But Fuller is one of the great fans that we have. He loves to come to practice. The players really relate to him, and that's who asked me the question. But, you know, my golf game is kind of up and down. So sometimes I play well. J.C. Wells is supposed to be my coach, all right, so he's been fired a few times. So it's not his coaching, it's my lack of execution. But I actually shot like 77 or something one day, and then 89 the next. So I called Zay and fired him, all right, because I went from 77 to 79. So he sent me a text picture of him and Justin and Tiger Woods and Trey Mullinax playing. And he sent me a picture of those guys walking down the fairway, and he said, "I got a new gig. I don't need you."
That's great.
So he fired me.
There you go. Well, Fuller, it's great to see you, man. Thanks for coming by today. Christopher Walsh, why don't you throw another question in the coach's direction?
Well, since we're off the field, I'm going to stick with that. And I noticed that you have stretched your acting chops again with some fun ads. Kind of wondering how they came to light this year, and how do they do that, Duck? I really want to know that.
Half black.
Well, you know, the duck is pretty fascinating. The duck actually is, maybe they wouldn't want me to tell you this, but the duck is actually like a puppet. And there are 4 gentlemen who do the animals in Jurassic Park and some of the other things that actually are pulling the strings on the duck to make the duck, and the duck looks, real. Real.
Sure.
Now, it's a very expensive duck, so I guess it should look real. But these guys are going, you know, like pulling strings and making this thing walk like a normal duck, the same way they do animals in, you know, some of these movies.
Sure. I thought it was a robot.
Like Avatar, they did all that stuff in Avatar. So, but that's how they make the duck work. And when you look at the duck, you really think the duck is real. And when you talk to the duck, you really think the duck is real. So I had a new friend for a while.
Yeah, well, you know, if it walks like a
Probably
duck.
like a lot of my friends who, they're good friends as long as we win, but
Well, yeah, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's a duck. Whatever the story. That's great. Since we're talking about off-the-wall stuff or a little different stuff, let me take a question here from the Nick Saban Show blog. Tim is in Muscle Shoals. Says, Coach, I saw your video series with Armin Katayan this week. It was great to see your close relationship with the players. How close can you get as a friend versus a coach with the players?
well, I don't think you're really. I think you can be close with players, and I think it's a lot like being a parent. I mean, you have fun with your children, you play games with them, you laugh with them, but they also know that, you know, you can correct them and sort of reprimand them in a way to benefit them doing things that are going to help them be successful. So I don't know. I'm not trying to be their buddy, but I don't want them to be uncomfortable around me as their coach or a teacher, and I don't want them to be in an atmosphere where they don't feel like they can have fun.
Sure.
So, you know, there's you kind of draw the line there, but I think everybody knows when, you know, you drop the hammer.
You're the man.
And you say, this is how it's going to be, that everybody is going to respond, you know, in a way that you want them to respond, because they have that kind of respect for not only what you're doing, what you're trying to do, right, but the standard that you're setting. And you defined it before, you know, way back when. So it's not like this is something new that changes on a day-to-day basis. And I've asked all the players what their goals and aspirations are and how their behavior sort of matches those goals, and how is it going to affect your chances of having those, achieving those goals in the future. I mean, we had that conversation today with some guys.
And it's never easy, but you got to lay down the law.
No doubt. And you can lay down the law. You don't have to yell and scream about it. You just say, this is how it is.
Got to be emphatic, yeah. Coach, when you watch a guy like Najee do what he did on that touchdown, I mean, you see him on the practice field. Do you like the rest of us, do you just sometimes shake your head in amazement at what these men can do, what their ability allows them to do?
Well, yeah, I do. But, you know, we've not been, you know, a big fan, really, for safety purposes of Najee jumping over people. But I guess when you have success doing it, I had a coach once that said you can break any rule to win the game. So
there you go.
Doesn't want to break anything else.
But no, I just
That's exactly right.
I do think that, you know, Najee had his best game. He played with a lot more confidence in the game. He pressed the line of scrimmage a little bit better on the runs. He had some real positive downhill runs in the game. I've always talked about, and people, you know, don't really know what a good receiver he is and how good he is in space because of his size, his ability to break tackles, but you know, he's got good change of direction, so he's really hard to get on the ground, combination of those things, and it showed up on that play that he made right before the half on the 4th and 2. You know, he made a guy miss, he broke a tackle, and he jumped over a guy, all in one play. So the jumping over part, you know,
you can do without if you had a choice.
Well, but you know, I mean, it worked for him. Yeah. But I just, from a safety standpoint, we always try to get him to keep his pads down.
I hear you, Lauren. What else is on your mind to ask the coach?
All right, Coach. I want to know about your game. We're talking about your basketball game. We hear about your noontime basketball league. Which coach could you take one-on-one? I want to hear this confidence that you got. Who could you take one-on-one?
Well, you know, I've been WIA, you know what that is, wounded in action, right?
True.
I mean,
sure.
We didn't play last winter, which is the first time we've never played, you know, since I started coaching.
So they didn't play in your absence either.
They didn't play in my absence. So, you know, but it was all because of the hip thing. And now that I got that fixed, I'm ready to go. So, but I do have to, I have to watch the guys on our staff. You know, when we get so much turnover on staff, everybody worries about how that affects the program, how it affects the players. Well, it affects my basketball team, all right, too, because now I got to check out the guys and see who can play. I don't know who can play.
Who's got the most skill? You, besides you.
No, I mean, I don't have the most skill. I just got being the commissioner, I can pick my team, so I can pick better players on my team. Mm-hmm. I get to pick the guy that guards me, all right, which I can get somebody that I'm at least a little better than, all right, and I call the fouls. So that's a pretty good equalizer.
Coach, you had mentioned in your press conference the other day about the passing of the police officer here in Tuscaloosa. And we have a phone call from Fort Payne, Alabama right now. Carl, who himself is a police officer. Of course, if you're not familiar, if you're not in our area, Dornell Cussett was a police officer who was killed in action the other day. And that's what we're speaking of. Carl, and you're on the phone with Coach Saban right now.
Hey, Coach, how are you tonight?
Good, Carl. How are you?
I'm doing great. Coach, our thoughts and prayers out, to that officer and his family, of course. That's heartbreaking to hear that.
Well, there's no question about the fact that, everybody in our organization, first of all, we really appreciate what police officers do to help us have a safe community. I mean, it's really, really important that we have people like that who are willing to make the sacrifices that they make and put themselves at risk, which in Darnell's case was, very, very detrimental to him and his family, and our thoughts and prayers are with him. But for all people who are in law enforcement, we have a tremendous amount of respect for what you do, and we appreciate what you do because you help us all be safe. And
Coach,
sometimes I
appreciate that.
don't think we say that enough.
I was a 13-year veteran. I've only been in law for about 2 years, but definitely, can see the dangers and all that involved. Football is an awesome sport. A lot of people know that officers don't really make that much money, but we do it because we love our communities. I don't get to come to any Bama games, but that don't mean that me and my buddies don't spend every minute on Saturday watching, our boys play.
Right.
They weren't the only ones that were chosen, for an award, which you were, which is being inducted into the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame next year.
Yes.
And I just want to tell you that I think all of us as Alabama fans are very proud of that for you, and it's well deserved.
It is a great honor, Coach. Congratulations.
Well, I really thank you, Pee Wee, for that. Certainly, it's an honor for me. There's a lot of outstanding folks that had a lot of great accomplishments in the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. So this is something that's very, very flattering. But I think that there's so many people that have contributed to, our success, through the years, whether it was LSU or here at Alabama. And I think when you get awards and you get recognized for things like this, you're only really kind of receiving these awards on behalf of all those people. I mean, Kirby was there the whole time we were there. Derek Dooley was there the whole time. Jimbo Fisher was there the whole time. I mean, there's a lot of people who contributed to recruiting a lot of good players. And I'm sure the success that we've had here at Alabama also enhanced that. And we've had, a large number of great players, but a lot of really, really good coaches who have contributed to the success that we've had here too. So it's great to be honored like this, but I'm only receiving the honor on behalf of all the folks who contributed to the success that we've had.
Coach, to your right, we have a gentleman who's joined us here for the evening. Hello, sir.
Hey, Coach, have veterans like Raekwon Davis and Anthony Jennings been key in helping some of the younger guys on the front seven, veterans get up?
I don't think there's any question about we've got some really good older guys on our team this year, and they've been very supportive of the young players. And I think it takes a lot of patience. Those guys have a pretty high standard for the expectation of how they think we should play. And what I've sort of tried to get them to understand is you can't get frustrated with the young players. If the other players see that you're showing your frustration in them because whether they make a mental mistake or they don't, fit a run right or whatever, because our players kind of know how we're supposed to do it. That's not good. It doesn't help their confidence. It makes them more anxious. Even though we want to have success, you've heard me say this 100 times before, when you focus on outcomes, it's a distraction. You got to stay focused on what do we have to do to get the outcome. And that's what I like for our older players to do with these young guys. And they have been very supportive of the players, and I think that has been very helpful, to the players. So, and those two guys have been very, very good leaders.
Why don't you throw a question at the coach?
All right, Coach.
I have a question. I mean,
sure.
How, and I know you don't work directly with them now, but how did you put up with Marcus Spears and Greg McElroy? I mean, because I had my time with them for 4 years. I just wondered how your time with them, if it was any better than my time with them.
So you told us about the story with Marcus Spears getting in your convertible car when you pretty much had to put the top down because he couldn't fit otherwise when you were back at LSU.
No, it wasn't pretty much. There was no other way to do it but put the top down.
Just stick his head out the top there.
Yeah.
Hey, those are great guys. They're a lot of fun. I always enjoy working with them. Always good personalities on that side of things. Love those guys. So speaking on the defensive side of the football, speaking on youth, especially, how is your approach different as a coach when you bring these younger guys in and help them transition from high school to college football, especially with the speed of the game and what it is here in the SEC?
Well, I think guys come in with a lot of expectation now, all right, which is something that is not maybe beneficial to getting them to focus on development. You know, what we'd like for young players to focus on is, how am I developing? All right, but we have sort of this, you know, these guys get a lot of positive self-gratification for the careers that they've had. They get 5-star ratings, 4-star ratings. So they come in with this expectation that they didn't really create for themselves. But they feel pressure that they have to play immediately. They have to make an impact right away. And when that doesn't happen, they get extremely frustrated. Where on what we'd like for them to do is focus on, what do I have to do to develop to be a good player? How can I focus on the things that, you know, are really going to help me become the kind of player that I can be so I can be productive, rather than, you know, looking at the outcome, what team am I on, how much am I going to play, rather than looking at what do I have to do to be able to play. And you know, that's really what we try to get those guys to be able to focus on. But the frustration, and I think this is why you have a lot of freshmen that transfer, get really frustrated. You know, why am I not playing? Why am I not starting? But if you ask them who they're better than, they really can't tell you.
Yeah. But they're used to being the big guy on campus.
Right. So I usually ask, well, who are you better than? Oh, I'm not really better than anybody. Well, how are you supposed to play in front of the other guys? I mean, but it's an expectation that's created because everybody is telling them they should be playing. That's what they've been told all the way through. All right? But we should be focusing with our children, all right, and people that we coach and try to develop on development. You know, how can we get them to do the things they need to do so they can be successful, and focus on that. But that's a word that is becoming less and less significant in terms of what people think about, and everybody wants immediate positive self-gratification for, I want to have success right now, and I'm not necessarily interested in all these things that you're talking about I need to do to be successful. And I don't think that's good. I don't think that's good for young people, and I don't think it's good for, you know, it just doesn't teach you the lessons of life that you need to be able to learn so that you can be successful.
Very true. Very true.
I just want to say I'm happy to be able to sit next to you for an hour, because I don't know whenever I'll get this hour back. So the fact that other people get to ask questions, I'm going to edge my way in here. I want to ask you quickly about recruiting guys, and more just watching talent. Over your years, is there a guy that you can think back to that when you saw him instantly, you knew he was going to turn into the player that you had? And it actually didn't even have to be a guy that played for you. You might have just seen him somewhere along the lines and he went on to have a career that he did. But just an innate, raw athleticism that you saw, and it just clicked and it turned into what you thought it would.
Well, the first guy that comes to mind is Dante Hightower.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's from is it Lewisburg or someplace like that in Tennessee, which is kind of a small town, small school. I went there when I used to be able to go out on the road in the spring, and I watched him in spring practice. And he didn't really have any offers or anything like that. This guy's got really nice size, and he's very athletic. He's playing defensive end. He's standing up and rushing. And I told everybody, I said, this guy's a really good player. We need to recruit him and offer him. And, you know, like coaches, all the coaches, you know, I go by evaluation of players. we recruited Corey Webster at LSU, who played 10 years starting corner for the New York Giants, and no one else recruited him. No one else recruited him. He was a high school quarterback, and I said, this guy would be a good corner. So I look at the players and evaluate them kind of like we do in the draft, and that's how I was looking at Dante. Well, a lot of assistants say, well, no one's recruiting him. Why do we want him? I don't care who's recruiting him. If he fits our criteria for what we want, then that's the most important thing. And I think that's the thing that people get a little hung up on now in recruiting, because we recruit these guys so early now. It's impossible to really evaluate them, and they get these 4- and 5-star ratings when they're sophomores in high school. And therefore everybody thinks, well, we're going to recruit these guys. Well, you go recruit them, but you really didn't even watch the film. And one of the things that I think has helped us through the years, and I got this from Belichick, was, we have critical factors for what we're looking for to play that particular position on our team, because we know what our system's going to be, so we know what we're looking for, whether it's at wide receiver, outside backer, cornerback, whatever it is. So when a guy has those criteria and fits those criteria, then we recruit him. And if he doesn't, I don't care how many stars he's got. I usually don't know how many stars a guy's got. I'm asking the question, why are we recruiting this guy? So I think it's important that you know what you want and you go get it. You haven't heard this story, but everybody else in Alabama has. Miss Terry never takes a list to the store. So if you go to our lake house, we'll have 7 bottles of ketchup and no mustard. Because we just buy stuff. We just buy stuff. We don't buy what we need, we just buy stuff. So if you recruit that way, you end up with all these guys that are
really
just like having
ketchup.
7 bottles of ketchup. 6 of them don't have any use. So.
Let me just quick follow up on that though.
Sure.
When you look at if you go to look at a guy in high school like a Corey Webster, you mentioned he's a quarterback, but how do you go in with a clean slate and say, I could turn this guy into something else? That must be challenging when you're only looking at him play a certain position within certain skill sets, and have to really open your mind to think he could accomplish other things for you though.
Yeah, but you also watch him play basketball. All right, so you see his change of direction, initial quickness, how he moves his feet, eye-hand coordination, can he catch a ball? All right, so the critical factors for a defensive back are you got to be able to tackle, which we couldn't evaluate because he never played defense. You got to be able to play the ball in the deep part of the field, and you got to be able to play man-to-man. So if you watch a guy play basketball and you watch him play defense, you can tell if he has the footwork, change of direction, open his hips, all those things. So, and sometimes you're taking a chance, but, you got to know what you're looking for.
The question was submitted by Will in Muscle Shoals. It was on the Nick Saban Show blog on AL.com. It says, Coach, you've all heard about the basketball games that you and your coaches play at lunchtime. Assuming you were a basketball coach instead of a football coach, which of your former players would you consider for your starting 5? And this guy says, Terrence Cody would be my center. I don't know about yours. And then he says, Roll Tide. Did you ever think about some of those guys as hoop stars?
Well, first of all, I love Terrence Cody.
Sure.
But I would question, just in my little way of evaluating my team for basketball, does he have the hops to play center? I had 405 pounds or whatever he weighed. Julio would be, one of my first picks.
Good
because
height.
he was big, physical, had great lower body explosion. I can't say that I ever saw him play basketball, but I would just say that, that would be, one of the guys that would come to mind very quickly.
Yeah, there are a number of others, but that's a great question, and we appreciate you calling in, Will. We do have a young man standing right here to your right with a question. Good evening. How are you?
I'm good.
What's your question for the coach?
What's your name, buddy?
My name's Jacob.
Jacob.
I know you like cars, but what's your favorite car ever?
My favorite car ever. That's an interesting question because when I was a kid growing up, from the time I was about 11 years old until I think I got married, I had to work at my dad's service station. All right, and the number one thing that always motivated me was what was the hot new car.
Mm-hmm.
All right, like the 67 GTO, you know,
There
that
you
was
go.
the 442 Cutlass.
Classic
you know,
muscle
I
cars.
can remember all these cars. All right, but I'm not saying this because we own dealerships now, but there was one of those two-seat Mercedes that came in one day, and I said, man, this beats them all. All right, so that's always been kind of my favorite. And after all these years, you know, we kind of own one, but don't ever drive it, so it's not really what I thought it would be.
Those SLs are pretty. Those SLs are pretty cool, though, aren't they?